All right, buckle up, because today we're going to dig into a topic that's surprisingly massive, like literally.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about trash.
Yes.
So you sent us this YouTube video, Tragedi Leuwigajah, Tragedi Sampakdapura Kedua di Dunia, about a landfill disaster in Indonesia.
Right.
And it's considered the second worst in history, which is just wild.
Wow.
And it really got me thinking about just the sheer volume of garbage we produce globally.
It's astounding, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, according to the World Bank's What a Waste 2.0 report, the world generates over 2 billion tons of waste every year.
2 billion tons. That's almost unfathomable.
It is, and while many countries contribute to that staggering figure, Indonesia holds this kind of unfortunate title of being the 5th largest waste producer globally.
Wow.
Think about that for a second. Indonesia, a nation still on the path of development, grappling with poverty and infrastructure challenges, is generating almost 70 million tons of waste annually.
70 million.
That's like every single person throwing away their own body weight in trash every year.
Wow, that really puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
It makes this story of the Leuwigajah landfill even more significant. So tell me, what can you tell us about this landfill?
Well, the Leuwigajah landfill, located near the cities of Bandung and Cimahi, was established in the 1980s.
Okay.
But right from the outset, it was plagued with controversy. The site itself was completely unsuitable for a landfill.
Really?
Situated too close to residential areas, water sources, and valuable farmland.
You know, the source material mentioned something really interesting about the landfill's beginnings. Apparently, residents were initially told that the site was going to be a tourist destination, not a landfill.
Wow.
What a deceptive tactic.
It certainly highlights a lack of transparency from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sadly, that lack of transparency, coupled with the disregard for established landfill placement guidelines, really set the stage for disaster.
And the residents knew it, right?
Oh, yeah.
They protested, they voiced their concerns about the environmental impact, the contaminated wells, that ever-present stench of garbage. It must have been awful.
Absolutely. The source really emphasizes the residents' growing fear and anger.
Yeah.
Initially, the landfill had employed a sanitary landfill system, which is a more controlled and environmentally sound approach to waste disposal.
More controlled, how so?
Well, in a sanitary landfill, waste is spread in thin layers, compacted, and then covered with a layer of soil daily.
Okay.
This layering helps to contain odors, minimizes the risk of fires, and reduces groundwater contamination.
Makes sense.
However, this method is more expensive and requires more land.
Okay.
So at some point, Leuwigajah transitioned to a cheaper but significantly riskier method, open dumping.
Which is exactly what it sounds like, right?
Basically.
Just piling the garbage up with no real system.
Unfortunately, yes. And this is where things really start to spiral out of control.
Yeah.
Imagine this. A mountain of garbage, growing larger every day, reaching heights of 60 to 100 meters.
100 meters.
For context, that's taller than the Statue of Liberty.
It's almost impossible to imagine a problem of that scale being ignored, yet that's precisely what happened.
It's a tragic case of short-sightedness and a failure to heed the warnings. And as we know, those ignored warning signs have a way of coming back to haunt us.
So we've got this ticking time bomb of a landfill towering over these communities. What happened next?
Well, the rainy season hit, and as you can imagine, all that water soaking into this mountain of garbage only made the situation more unstable.
I can't imagine the anxiety the residents must have been feeling living in the shadow of that.
It's unimaginable, and then in the early hours of February 21st, 2005, their worst fears were realized.
Oh, no.
Around 2 a.m., a massive explosion ripped through the night, shaking people awake.
The methane gas.
Exactly. Remember how we talked about methane being a byproduct of decomposing waste?
Right.
It had been building up inside the landfill, trapped beneath layers of garbage, and it finally reached a critical point.
Creating a literal ticking time bomb.
Yeah, a very apt description. And what makes this even more tragic is that this explosion, this initial eruption, could have been prevented. A properly designed and managed sanitary landfill would have included gas collection systems to vent out the methane, mitigating the risk of such a disaster.
So this explosion, this ignition of the methane is what triggered the landslide.
Yes. The force of the explosion destabilized the already precarious mountain of garbage, and with the added weight of the rain, a massive landslide was unleashed.
Oh my gosh.
The source describes it as a tsunami of trash, engulfing homes and sending people running for their lives in the darkness.
The video footage from the aftermath is just devastating. Entire neighborhoods just gone.
It took hours for the landslide to come to a halt. By daybreak, the true scale of the devastation was revealed. Two villages, Slimis and Pojo, were buried under millions of tons of garbage.
It's heartbreaking. The official death toll is listed at 157, but the source suggests that the actual number of victims could be much higher. So many people, unaccounted for, lost beneath the debris.
It's a stark reminder that the mismanagement of waste has very real and very human consequences. This wasn't just an environmental disaster, it was a human tragedy of immense proportions.
And it forced Indonesia, and really the world, to confront this global waste crisis.
Absolutely. In the wake of the tragedy, there were calls for change, for greater accountability, for a complete overhaul of waste management practices.
And February 21st, the anniversary of the Leuwigajah disaster, is now commemorated as National Waste Awareness Day in Indonesia.
Right.
It seems like they're trying to turn this horrific event into a catalyst for change. It makes you wonder, did anything actually change? They created National Waste Awareness Day, but did that actually translate into, like, better waste management practices? What was done after the Leuwigajah landfill disaster?
Well, in the immediate aftermath, Bandung faced a dire situation. With Leuwigajah no longer an option, the city had nowhere to put its garbage.
And that's when Bandung earned the nickname Bandung, the Sea of Garbage, right? I remember reading about that. Streets overflowing with trash, no place to put it. What a stark image of the crisis.
It really highlights how ill-equipped many cities are to deal with just the sheer volume of waste they generate. The source mentions that it took about a year for the Indonesian government to establish a new landfill, Seri Mukti.
Seri Mukti. Okay, so now we're talking about a brand new landfill. Is it any better? Did they learn from the mistakes of Leuwigajah?
That's the critical question, isn't it? While Seri Mukti certainly represents a step forward in terms of capacity, it's significantly larger than Leuwigajah, but the underlying issue remains. Indonesia, like many nations, is trapped in this cycle of producing more waste than it can manage.
Yeah, it's like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a teaspoon.
Yeah.
It feels like a problem that requires more than just building bigger landfills.
Exactly, and that's where the importance of shifting our mindset comes in. The video emphasizes that it's not just about where we dump our trash, but about fundamentally changing our relationship with waste. It's about reducing consumption, reusing what we can, and finding innovative ways to recycle and compost.
It reminds me of those fascinating documentaries about how Japan manages its waste. They've got it down to a science. Recycling, composting, even incinerating waste to generate energy. They send a fraction of what we do to landfills.
It's a testament to what's possible when a society commits into sustainable waste management. And it requires a collective effort from individuals making conscious choices to governments implementing supportive policies and infrastructure.
So what does this all mean for us, for the listener who's been engrossed in this deep dive into the world of garbage and its consequences? It can feel overwhelming, right? Like, how can my actions really make a dent in a problem this big?
It's a question we all grapple with, but here's the thing. While the problem is massive, the solution is multifaceted. It's about those everyday choices we make. Choosing reusable products over single-use plastics, composting food scraps instead of tossing them in the trash, supporting businesses that prioritize sustainability. These small actions, multiplied by millions, can create a ripple effect.
It's not about waiting for someone else to fix it. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play. This deep dive into the Leuwigajah tragedy wasn't just about unearthing a horrific event from the past. It was about shining a light on a global crisis that continues to unfold, and more importantly, it's about empowering us all to be part of the solution. So the next time you take out the trash, take a moment to think about where it ends up and what choices you can make to lessen the burden. Until our next deep dive, keep asking those important questions.